welcome to the Entertainment is Female, a conversation with Hollywood executives at San Diego Comic-Con at Home 2021. I'm so excited to be here. I am Tiffany Smith, and this is our third year doing this panel. So I've become great friends with these ladies, which I love so much. And I'm really excited to get into some new stuff this year with this panel. It's been a crazy, interesting year, but Hollywood has kept going, kept chugging along. So I'm excited to hear what their experiences have been this year and share all of that with you guys. And since this is our third year, I kind of wanted them to do intros for themselves, because we talk about producing or being an executive in Hollywood, but that means so many different things. And I think that they can each give the best synopsis of what their job actually entails. So let's hop into it. First up, Sam, do you want to give name, title, what you do on a day-to-day?
So I'm Sam Crawley. I work at Skybound Entertainment. I'm the director of development in the film and TV department. What makes my company a little more unique is that we do film and TV, but we also do comics and podcasts and merchandise and games and tabletop games, all within the company. So my role is to really take that IP that's created and turn it into either a film or a TV show. And then the process is always the same: finding the writer, finding the director, and putting together a package that hopefully someone will purchase and make.
All right, next up, Nikki.
Hi, I'm Nikki Baida. I'm a vice president of film at Lord Miller, working for Chris Miller and Phil Lord, who are writer, directors, and producers. On the film side, we have what's called a first look deal at Universal, meaning everything we generate in development, we show to Universal first. They have first right of refusal of whether or not they want to pick it up and develop it and make it. So that's a lot of my job is, looking for new material to develop, to bring to the studio, always looking for things for Chris and Phil to write and direct. And then we go and make these movies, and hopefully I go on set and don't mess it up.
I don't think you're messing it up. Let's jump over to Aubrey, because you guys work together. How you doing, Aubrey?
I'm good. My name's Aubrey Lee. I work with Nikki at Lord Miller, again, for Phil Lord and Chris Miller, writer, director, producers. But I'm on the TV side of the company, and I'm the senior vice president of TV production and development. And I basically do what Nikki does, but on the TV side, look for projects. We actually have an overall deal on the TV side of our company at Sony Pictures Television, which means they are our studio on all of our TV projects for the term of this deal. So we are looking for stuff to bring to them, to then take out to buyers. I do a lot of development, looking for that material. And then when we're actually in production on something, I'm on set. Or if it's animated, I'm just working on it remotely. This year, obviously remotely. And and then in the editorial process, just helping with marketing and editing and all the way through the process to when the show comes out.
Awesome. Okay, next up, let's jump over to Jeanette. How are you?
Doing very well. So Jeanette Francis, I'm a VP at Bad Robot on the feature side. I'm an exec, which basically means that I develop and produce movies for Bad Robot, and I read scripts, chase down exciting IP, and I see my films, through production and through post as well. That's about it.
That's a lot. We'll get more into the minutia of all of that later on. But next up, Gray, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. I'm so excited to see all your little faces.
My name is Gray Cusack. Most recently, I worked on the buyer side at Sony Pictures Entertainment for Columbia Pictures Division. I was a director of development there. I was assessing the marketplace and what audience will want to see at the theater after both in the pandemic and after. And then prior to that, I was working as a creative executive at Hasbro Film and TV, mostly going through the Hasbro IP library, brainstorming approaches to that IP. So everything from story IP like Dungeons and Dragons and Transformers to Furby and Game of Life, and trying to figure out the best way to bring that IP to the screen and make it a big emotional theatrical experience.
Nice. And last up, we've got Mette, who I just have to say, I'm so thankful that you brought all of us together she was the first one who was like, this is going to be an awesome panel. And every year is bringing us back and be like, we're doing it again. So thank you so much, Mette, for bringing this awesome panel together, because I get so much out of it. And I know everybody who's gotten to see us in person at the first one and watch online has gotten so much out of it too. So now we'll go over to you.
Thank you, Tiffany. That's so sweet. And thank you for being here again. We love you. And I love this whole crew. So it's so exciting to me that we get to do this. And now we get to do it virtually so people can, tune in all over the world, which is just so exciting. So yeah, my name is Mette Norkjaer. I am a creative executive over at Boom Studios, which is a comic book publisher and a production company. So I do pretty much what Sam does. She was talking about how she basically mines IP from their library. I know, Sam, you guys also do a lot of, bringing outside material in and working on it. So I sit and try to develop IP that is either comic books or graphic novels, do a lot of writer meetings and do a lot of reading in general to figure out who's that voice that we can bring into a project and have them adapt one of our properties for us. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And also I know most people watching might know what it means, but you guys talk about IP a lot. So do you want to just give, what exactly does IP mean for someone who may not know? Mette?
Yeah, I'll take it. So IP stands for intellectual property. And that can be anything that has been published, or basically, comic books. It can be a short story. It can be a podcast. It can be a news article. It can be a magazine, a piece. Am I missing anything, guys? I feel like it could be so many different things. It could be a piece of art.
It can be a Reddit story, which we talked about recently.
A song even.
Yeah. I guess go ahead.
Tweets. It can be toys. I mean, it can be toys also. Anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Toys.
Right. Did you say tweets?
Yeah.
Sola.
Yeah, Sola, exactly. That was a series of tweets that went viral and became the big Jeannette Bravo movie at Sundance last year called Zola. Just came out.
We've been developing a TikTok story that we found, so can be that too.
Wow.
Crazy. It's so interesting, because I feel like when technology keeps moving forward, it's like you have to broaden what all these things mean. So that's why I'm really glad that we did what exactly does your job mean? Because I know even for you guys this year alone, what that entails has changed, because the industry has changed and had to kind of roll with what 2020 was into what 2021 is now. So let's jump into that. What has the work year been like for each of you guys? I know a lot of animation stuff has been going on. Mette, do you want to jump in, and then we can all kind of jump in if you got stuff to talk about for what this year?
That sounds great. Yeah, animation for sure has been a moving train. We've had a lot of stuff going on in animation over at Boom. We just announced that we're doing an animated series at Netflix with Polygon Pictures called Maquettes, which I'm really excited about. And it's funny because we've been doing this for 3 years, and I feel like a lot of the time we've been talking about a lot of this cool stuff that I can't really talk about because it's not out there. Now we're finally getting to a place where we can be like, no, this is coming out, and it's been announced. So that's really exciting. So animation has been really exciting and really busy because a lot of it can be done remotely. And on the live action front, we had our first live action series for Disney Plus called Just Beyond, based on the graphic novels by R.L. Stine, the Goosebumps creator. So yeah, that's going to be coming out later this year. So a lot of exciting stuff is happening. And it's been an oddly productive year, once we kind of found our footing in the whole pandemic.
Yeah. Jeanette, what has this year been like for you work-wise? Because I know you've kind of been one of the ones that is, yes, we only see each other on Zoom, but we're not in the same. You've kind of been bopping all over.
Yeah, I was in Toronto for a bit. I'm in Atlanta now, and pretty soon I'll be on set of our movie that was pushed for COVID, but now finally in production in Vancouver. So it's been really incredible. We can work from anywhere. We've been just as productive as a team. And yeah, I think it's opening a lot of new doors for us in terms of how we can continue to flexibly work and still do development and still have face-to-face contact with the people that we need to have it with. So.
What about Aubrey for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, Nikki can speak about the feature stuff. We're working on a couple of animated movies we just had one come out actually, which Nikki can talk about. But on the TV side, we've also been working on our animation remotely, which is really fun to do. We also have a couple of writers' rooms open, which is interesting because they've all obviously since last year moved to Zoom, which is probably so exhausting for them. I've had not in the room with them all the time, but being on Zoom for many hours at a time is so draining. So that's a really interesting change, but kind of nice because everyone can be around the country or in the different places in the world even, and it's not as big of a deal. We are starting up the production process on Clone High, which we're doing for HBO Max, which the room has been open for over Zoom for a couple months. And we actually shot a show from October 2020 to February 2021, that we're doing for Apple called The After Party, that Chris, Nikki and my boss, had written. It's a murder mystery comedy, and it's like got a lot of genres baked into it, and it was a really crazy premise to pull off in general, and then doing it during a pandemic and being the on-set producer during all of it, making sure everyone was safe and making sure everyone was getting tested, and we knew exactly how to protect everyone while also making a funny show that was also really hard to pull off, was a really cool learning experience, and it was so fun. I think everyone was just very excited to be around people and making something that brought joy to their lives, and we're really excited for people to see it. We're just editing it now, and doing that a lot remotely too, which is really fun.
Yeah. Nikki, you want to jump in? Because I know she was mentioning the feature kind of stuff, animation you could talk about.
Yeah, we got lucky in that, a lot of our animation stuff that was in the works didn't really slow down too much in the pandemic. It took a little beat for everybody to kind of figure out what it was to work from home. And, there was some, problems to solve with how were we going to safely be on a mixed stage for one of our movies, but we worked all that out. We had a movie called The Mitchells versus the Machines that was originally going to be released by Sony last October, and Netflix ended up picking it up, and it came out on Netflix at the end of April, and it's done really well. And we've gotten a lot of really great feedback. Okay.
I love
a lot of great feedback. I didn't work on it, but I'll take full credit for it anyway. It is wonderful. And then we're hard at work on a sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2, and cranking right along on some other animation stuff too.
Sam, what's the year been like for you work-wise?
It's been good. I will say that I feel like my team now lives in my apartment with me, which I feel like boundaries could be set up a little bit more going forward, but it's been nice to not feel alone during all this time and having your team really be there. So that's been really nice. But we had our animated show Invincible come out on Amazon, which did really well, which was very exciting. We had a bunch of podcasts that we were able to do remotely, because that was super easy. So just, I think all of us tried to find ways to, actually get stuff made. And then in the meantime, we all do development, and development, it takes a while. So it was busy. We were just, cranking away, trying to find writers and directors, and everyone was home. So everyone was reading. So it was actually a productive time. Not as much downtime as I thought it was going to be, but hopefully soon we can all get a vacation.
Yeah. Well, and I think the crazy thing is, for my side of things, experiencing this year, obviously we all got to talk a ton. And I was like, for being talent, there was definitely a period that was very hard because there was nothing going on. So, you're trying to balance, what can I be doing next? And thankfully animation was a really big part of this year for me. And it was just so lovely seeing the year come together where it's, I recorded a lot of stuff for Master of the Universe Revelation that'll be on Netflix at the end of July, which I'm super pumped on. But we did a lot of the recording before, and then now that things are opening up again, we just did a virtual press day. And that was just so interesting because it's normally for voiceover, you don't always meet all the actors. And that's kind of still just continuing through, that we're meeting on Zoom, and it'll be really great when the show comes out, but it's I'm fingers crossed that, we're getting to a place where we can do celebrations and get-togethers with everybody from the cast. Because I think for me, that's a big part that's been missing, is even if you're doing projects and working on things, that communal celebrating the project coming out or completed, or, just getting to champion each other in person is missing, because we haven't been able to do that. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. And, it's been we've talked about stuff, and it was interesting hearing when Aubrey and we were on set and trying to sort things out and COVID testing. And, you know, I got to do a film in Hawaii. And so that was where I was like, I'm doing COVID test every other day. And it's amazing, a huge blessing to get to be in Hawaii and film. But it was definitely a totally different experience this year than any other year on a project. So
I will say my nose has still not really recovered from the amount of testing that we did on the after party. Yeah. I had 11 tests a week while we were infection on.
Oh,
we had, in order to make sure we had the results in fast enough to feel safe starting each day, we would do rapid tests for core people who were like in the area of the camera and the actors and everyone who like was makeup, and you know, the actors are the people with Tiffany who are like putting themselves most at risk because they're the ones who aren't wearing masks and PPE while we're shooting. So we really want to make them feel comfortable. So we would do rapid tests every day and PCR tests, which take longer to get the results in, but are more accurate. So 2 types of tests, 5 days a week. And then on Sundays, we actually ended up, just when the surges were happening in like November and January, after the holidays, we had everyone go to Sony to get a test on Sunday before coming back to set on Monday.
Well, and I think that's the thing where it's like, it was not pleasant, all the way up to the brain testing, but every time I would get frustrated, I was like, thank you for being here to do this for us, keep working and keep everybody safe. Because
I mean, we had officers on set, like COVID officers, who would like carry around a 6-foot long stick and like show you what it looked like to be standing 6 feet apart, which was, I was like, please stop acting like we're at a high school dance and you're trying to keep me from touching someone. But, you have to be gracious. It was a crazy, stressful situation. These people were trying to protect all of us. And it was good to remind everyone of that when it was frustrating.
Yeah. And I think, the year has been so strange and interesting, and coming out of it, like how do we recalibrate? What are the things that people want to see now and the stories that you guys are looking for? And Gray, I know that you were saying just you talked about what people want to see in the theater before the pandemic and afterwards. Do you kind of want to jump in, and what are the things that you guys were looking for? How'd you find stories for moving forward?
Well, something that I've always believed about the movies and the theatrical experience is that it's really about those big emotions. And I think that that's been even more so re-emphasized in the pandemic, in that that's what people are going to turn out to the theaters for. And the great success of Quiet Place 2 really proved that. In my experience, what I saw the studios really going after were those movies with the big emotions that you want to feel with big audiences, because it just magnifies it. So, that's horror movies, that's prestige, like the new Tarantino movie or Nolan movie. That's also musicals. It's anything where you're feeling a big emotion and comedies, obviously, like, Girls Trip. I saw that in a packed theater where people were throwing popcorn at the screen, and, I had a beer, and you wouldn't want to experience Girls Trip alone at home on a small screen. So I think that coming out of the pandemic, all of the studios have chosen to chase material while in the pandemic to give audiences that coming out of it. So that's really seemingly the most valuable material right now.
And Nikki, I know you had some stuff you wanted to add in on that one. How do you guys find the stories that you want to bring to life?
Yeah, the way we sort of develop it at Lord Miller kind of runs the whole gamut. We've had people bring us specs. We're going to make a movie called Cocaine Bear in a couple of months. That's about what you think it's about, a bear on cocaine. And that came to us as a spec, and we loved it and fell for it, and we're able to set it up at Universal, and Elizabeth Banks is going to direct that for us. And we also deal with IP a lot, like Mette and Sam were talking about. We have a couple of different projects based on novels from Andy Weir that Chris and Phil are attached to direct. And we've had people bring us, just little iota of ideas, that we've then developed, or people have come to us with pitches or outlines, and we're so open as far as, whatever that idea looks like in the way that it comes to us, like we're happy to jump in if it's the right thing and figure out how to really bring it to life. So.
What about you? How do you guys find the stories that you're gonna develop? Mette?
Oh, sorry, there was a helicopter. Well, for Sam and I, it's and I don't want to speak for Sam, I'm sorry, but for me at Boom, it's mining the library that we have. You know, we have a gigantic library full of incredible stories from creators all over the world. So it's a lot of being familiar with what's in that library and then figuring out what makes the most sense to be pursuing at this moment, given, you know, the time we're in and what buyers are looking for. You know, like Gray was saying, it's like, okay, well, we know so-and-so is looking for this kind of material, then we kind of go through our library and say, well, maybe this could be something. And other times it's just if we get a new graphic novel in, which happens a lot, and we think it's incredible, then we're like, no, this is a no-brainer. We have to run with this. And then sometimes we bring on a producing partner. Other times we just produce by ourselves, and then, you know, we'll try to put a pitch together and take it out. So that's typically the way we do things.
Well, and I was lucky enough that you guys actually asked me to moderate a panel for Berserker.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that, how that project came about? Because I know it was such an interesting thing where it's like you see a Kickstarter happen and it's so huge, and then it turns into comic, and then I'll let you explain a little more.
Yeah, no, and it's a great point. You know, we've been, for instance, with Berserker, which was a gigantic release of ours this year, back in March, Keanu Reeves came to us and he had an original idea for this character. And then we were able to pair him with Matt Kent, who's the co-writer, and Ron Garney, the artist, and we basically created the team around him to bring his idea to life. So that's definitely something we're trying to do more of, as well as like reverse engineering maybe an idea that already exists in some way, shape, or form, and then make it into a comic book or graphic novel series and have it find a new audience and reach a new audience. And I think that was what was really exciting about the Kickstarter approach, was just the way you could bring audiences that maybe weren't familiar with comics, but somehow heard about Keanu Reeves doing this thing, and then they're like, oh, okay, maybe it might have changed their idea of what comics, what that medium is, and what we can do in that medium. So I think that's exciting, just to bring more awareness to it.
Yeah, and Aubrey, I know that you guys were just talking about different forms of IP, and you guys have podcasts that you're developing.
Well, we always look at podcasts. Like Nikki at our company, we have like a book scout that helps us, and we have like podcast memos and stuff that come out. We are adapting a podcast called Welcome to Night Vale for television with Peacock through Sony, which is really fun. It's such a fun, I'm a huge Twin Peaks like X-Files fan, and it's like a very comedy version of that world, and the podcast is amazing. It's been on for 10 years and they've done like hundreds of episodes, and they've toured the world doing like stage shows. They've written 4 books in this universe. It's like such a fun extended universe that they've developed. The creators of the podcast have developed such a rich mythology for. So like that's something we're really drawn to, like passion and excitement about, like being able to support them and help their vision come to life as a TV project is really fun. But I think, like Nikki said, we really look at all things, and like we were talking about in the beginning, nowadays it's like there's so much to look at for ideas. Like the Reddit no sleep post that sold the feature with Blake Lively attached is like a really interesting case study. So I think like knowing what the best format is for the IP is always the conversation we like to have, of like, is this a TV show? Is it a movie? What's the best way to tell a story? And then I think at the end of the day, like being flexible is always really important, and like being able to, like, if we can't find a way to sell something in one shape or form, maybe there's something else we can do with it. Or like Mette was describing, like maybe you make a podcast based on an idea you guys like to reverse engineer an audience, or like show a proof of concept to then develop it into something else. That's always like, I feel like nowadays that's something people are exploring in like being creative and flexible, which is cool.
Yeah, it's crazy because it's like I said, technology changes and there's always new ways of doing things, and knowing what your company is and what they're good at helps so much. It's like, I mean, I look at it as like, when you know who you are as a person, it's so much easier to pick the things that you want to do in life. And so for a company, it's the same, where it's like, the better you know what your company is and does, the better you can pick and choose this like crazy new and interesting IP and what will work for you guys. How's that work for you guys, Jeanette?
Yeah, I mean, we're really sort of passion driven all the way. At the end of the day, like we don't necessarily have a mandate per se. It's much more about, you know, what's special about this movie. Does it are we excited about it? Would we want to watch it? Do we know there's something about it that feels I don't know, like it needs to happen. Like this story needs to exist in the world, or this voice needs to be amplified. You put so much work into movies. Sometimes, in the case of our movie that we're going into production on this week, it can take 6 years. So really sort of falling in love with it, and having those sort of touch points that really, keep you driving forward. That's really what we sort of look for, whether it's a massive IP or something very small and intimate. So it's hard to articulate it exactly, but that's kind of how we look. And then all the strategies that Nikki and Aubrey and Mette have laid out are the tried and true ones. To just keep your finger to the pulse.
Yeah. And Sam, like we're talking about how you find the stuff that's right for you guys, but after the year that we've had, has kind of the target, or not mandate, but maybe mandate, that you guys are looking for changed? What are buyers looking for now this year?
I mean, even I would say Skybound as a company first, we've shifted a little coming out of this. We're known for The Walking Dead. We do a lot of horror. We do a lot of sci-fi, some darker, themes and tones. And I think coming out of this, we were like, oh, we need some levity. Like how do we do it in a way that feels organic and unique to who we are still? So trying to blend a lot of genres has been fun. So like horror comedies and we've been like focused on a lot of YA stuff to try and bring in some levity. So that's been like, just as a company trying to make some pivots. I've been trying to find a romance sci-fi for like 2 years. So that's my own like personal goal. But I do think that speaks to the buyers as well. I think that people need to feel good again, and especially looking at TV. I think like Ted Lasso and Bridgerton and Feel Good and these shows that people fell in love with over this past year because it just felt good. On the other hand, I will say, like, I think mysteries of, especially in the TV space, have been huge, like Flight Attendant and The Undoing and Mare of Easttown, like stuff that like gets people talking and being able to like, catch up with everyone on Monday, like, and get to talk about the new episode. So I think those two areas in TV, it's good focus. And then in features, it's going to be interesting to see what gets, bought and made, because it's riskier, they got to spend money on this stuff, and it costs a lot more. So I'm still a little intrigued to see how that's going to play out. But I think that contained smaller stuff, like the movie that you just did, Tiff, like On an Island, small crew, small cost, like that is reasonable and can be done. And I hope it gets to open up more, but I think that, we'll see how it is in the next few months. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's interesting because it almost feels like, which I've been missing for a long time, there hasn't been that like mid-level budget film or indie kind of filmmaking more, where it is small cast, small crew, smaller stories. But now I'm hoping that we get to see even more of that, because that it really was like this kind of vibe of, we felt like a little family making this project, where it's like we only really hung out with each other because of COVID, and you keep it so insulated, and you shoot on a short timeline because everyone's like, we just want to make sure we get through this and everyone's healthy and fine and good. And then the escapist part of it is that we had beautiful settings, the for us in particular on Aloha with Love, is it was like we didn't have to build sets because we were in Maui and it was the set, so I think I'm hoping that we get to see a lot more stuff that kind of comes through that way, where it's like natural settings and you can kind of just get there and do the indie vibe to make a film. And I think it comes across when you watch it, because you feel that energy and the connection that everyone has from being on that set together. How do you guys think it's changed with like streamers? I know we've talked about obviously things going in and out of the big theaters, but I think the streaming platforms through this whole year, it's like, oh, here's another streaming platform. Here's another streaming platform. Now we're going to kind of do this here, or another company buying another company. How has that kind of changed, or how do you guys keep up with what they're looking for?
It's hard.
Hard. Yeah, it's really hard. It's changing constantly, but that's kind of why I personally, in my philosophy and approach to things, like, first of all, it's really hard to sell anything at all. in general. It doesn't matter who you are or what company you work at. Like sometimes things just don't sell and there's no clear reason why it didn't work out. Sometimes the timing's not good. Sometimes it's not the right thing for that platform. That's why I think those things are changing so much. It's always good to have a positive, flexible, adaptable attitude of like, okay, that strategy didn't work. That place wasn't right. They weren't looking for this thing. Why don't we try something else? And Sony has been really good at helping us with it, and they have the same attitude towards it, which is really nice. So there's always like a way to find another thing to do with that project, hopefully. And it is hard to keep up, but I think, I don't know if anyone else has insight into what certain places have been looking for, but I personally, like everyone has said, have been looking for like, I've been watching Survivor for like 8 months. So like I'm on season 35 of Survivor, which is insane. And so I've just been watching stuff like that does feel escapist and like kind of just, especially in our industry, it's like when I'm working on TV all day, I don't really want to go eat dinner and watch a new program that feels like homework because I'm just watching new stuff that makes me think of work. So I've been turning to books and podcasts and watching reality TV to kind of like unwind and going hiking and stuff. But I do think, you know, the things that have excited me that have come out this year are like really positive, a lot of like female driven, just joyful shows like We Are Lady Parts, I love a lot. And Hacks, and like I love Betty, which has come back recently on HBO for season 2, and like all those shows are just like, it's sad that it's wish fulfillment to like see girls hanging out and having fun, but like because we've all been spending time apart for a year, it's nice to watch shows and comedies about that for me.
Gray, do you have any advice for people where it's like they're trying to write something or come up with something to pitch? Because obviously, like Aubrey was saying, you know, you never know what's going to sell. There's no like perfect right answer. But if because I know we're probably having some writers and creators watching this panel, if you could give them any advice.
I think it's really about the big unique idea that we haven't seen before. And that is easily digestible, whether that's with, you know, one comp meeting another, you know, like trying to think of a good example. Like, is it Matrix meets The Notebook? You know,
Sam's looking.
Sam wants that.
Write the pitch for Sam.
But so I think it has to be very easily digestible. So it's also easily marketable and you understand what it is going into it. Just usually the marketplace is saturated with a lot of sort of recycling of ideas. And when there is a big unique idea, it always stands out. And that's when you'll see lots and lots of offers, and also when packages will come together very quickly with talent and directors, just because everyone will get excited about the concept at the core. And when it's great writing too, awesome. But the big concept at the center of it is actually even more important, I would say, than the quality of the writing throughout.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's like talking about what people are looking for, having that big unique idea, but having it be authentic to you. Because I think there's so many times where people will try and come up with a big unique idea, but it's like, I think this is what people want to see, so I'm going to write it and pitch it. And sometimes it works, but I think especially with trying to make sure that we speak to the diversity of our audiences, that it's like, if you come up with something and it is big and huge, but it's unique to who you are and authentic to who you are, that's the stuff where it's like, oh man, I love watching this. Like for me, I've been binge watching Mythic Quest, and I'm like, if someone pitched that to me, I am a gamer. I do play D&D and Warcraft and all that kind of stuff. So it speaks to me on that level. But because it's so well done, anybody who isn't even into that stuff, you can watch the show and still connect with it. Because I think it's authentic to who created it. Like they're not putting on a front or thinking they're making something that people are going to buy just because people are going to buy it. It's because they have a passion for it. And same thing for all of you guys, where you're saying we're looking for the projects we're passionate about, because we won't want to be able to put them out there in the best way if we're not excited about it.
Yeah, I think like you're saying, if you can't tell that person is passionate and personally invested in creating that show, especially on the TV side, that like when you write a movie or pitch a movie, it's like you can bring in a ton of writers to rewrite that draft, and like it can get better the way it's executed easily. But on TV, we need someone who is like there for the long haul of like every second of their life for the next couple years or however long the show is on. They are making that show and they are show running that show. Or you have to pair them with a showrunner who's more experienced to like help them execute everything. And that marriage is always hard. Finding the right people to like pair together is always hard. So it's best when someone is like super passionate about it. And I think like that is something that you're saying, like if you're pitching something or coming up with an idea that doesn't feel organic, then that may work for you, but it is more inspiring to people on our side if like we know that person is going to be in it for the long haul.
And I think that advice is particularly pertinent, both what Tiffany and Aubrey were saying is particularly pertinent for horror, because when you write from a personal perspective about what scares you and put that into a horror movie, it always seems very genuine, just like, especially with the climate we've had in the last year where everyone's had a million different fears to deal with. So I particularly with horror, as much as you can speak from a personal perspective, the more unique and interesting the concept usually is.
And just because I'm a sci-fi dork, sorry, I also want to say one of my biggest pet peeves, and I also do a lot of comedy in my work and I like comedy. My biggest pet peeve is people trying to make sci-fi comedy without really caring about the mechanics of the world building or mythology behind it. That drives me insane, because I don't think if you're investing enough energy in giving people what they expect who are truly fans of that genre and just treating it as a comedy and not caring about, there's ways to go about that in a way that is funny, but it's like you're not going to really earn the respect of fans of that genre if you can't actually care about what they're looking for at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, it's finding that balance of being inside baseball and giving the true tried and true fan something, but also still making it broad enough for someone who doesn't know that stuff. And so the audience feels rewarded if they're a super fan of sci-fi. They get those little moments here and there.
We talk about it at Hasbro a lot, how to get both the initiated and the uninitiated in the door. So even if you don't play Dungeons and Dragons, how can we develop this movie and encourage the writer in our notes so that everyone will want to show up to see that movie, even if they don't play or they've never heard of it. So it's particularly important for adapting IP to the screen.
The last thing I will say, and then I will stop talking about this, is that we are, like on the feature side of our company, we're doing the next couple Spider-Verse movies. We are developing a suite of television shows in the Spider-Man universe that are all live action. So we're mining that IP for certain characters that we want to build television shows around, which is really exciting because no one has done that in live action yet. But it is also the same balance of like, how do we tell a version of a story with a character people don't know as well, that is going to feel really urgent and interesting and like a unique perspective on this type of superhero story that everyone wants to watch, but also honor like the fans of Marvel who want to see certain things happen in the show, but also do some things that are subverting that genre and like twisting it and doing it in a new way. It's really hard to get that balance. So that's like, we've spent a lot of time on our first show figuring out how to execute it in a way that's going to hit all those targets.
Well, and I think, talking about having a clear idea of what you're trying to pitch and nailing the actual execution of it, this year has been a year where pitching and bringing in story ideas has been very different than other years. Mette, what's something that you were excited about that came out of this year and kind of having that new form of pitching and figuring out how it's going to work?
Yeah, it's definitely been, challenging, and we've had to adjust a little bit in terms of pitching over Zoom. I don't think anything beats pitching in person because there's just so much just in body language that you don't get when you're sitting and looking at a screen. But something we actually explored and did a few times was pre-recording a pitch, because then you kind of had control over what was being delivered in those 20 minutes. And the 20-minute mark is very important because you lose people's attention after that point. So just putting that out there. But then
people are watching this panel for more than 20 minutes. I'm going to tell you that, right?
We're fascinating, so it's fine.
Wait for the surprise dance break in the middle of the panel.
Exactly. But then, so what we ended up doing was sending that pre-recorded pitch to buyers, and then whoever was interested would then raise their hand and we would have a follow-up meeting where it could be super productive and to the point where we went over their specific questions. And I thought that was just really, really great. And definitely made us rethink, you know, how to do things. And the part about control in that scenario is that you don't have to be concerned about people cutting in and out of the Zoom with their Wi-Fi or anything like that. You know, you kind of just go, here's the package. What do you think? Let's have a conversation. So that's been really interesting, I think.
That must also be nice for writers that, you know, pitching isn't comfortable for them, because that happens often and it's not an easy thing to do. So I feel like that's, you know, really beneficial to them.
Totally. Yeah. And sometimes we sent the pitch, you know, we would get on Zoom and then we were like, just kidding, watch this video. And we put it in the chat and they would watch it. And it wasn't 20 minutes, but it would have been a shorter version. And then we could then talk and there was no Wi-Fi issues, which I think was everybody's concern, you know, I think this time a year ago when we would take things out.
And it's just learning. I think it's been interesting for actors and even talking to some of my writer friends where it's like, I can give them tips because I'm like, I've had to do so many self-tapes or like things off of a laptop where you're like, put the script right under the camera. Like you don't even need to see everyone's face. Just like imagine that you're talking to an audience the whole time. And because I did a table read, and one of the producers was like, I can't believe you memorized that whole script. And I was like, that I just literally had it and I was reading the whole time. I mean, I was like, I'll take the compliment. And then later when we were on set, I was like, it's very sweet you said that. But I was like, I literally had the script right there. So it's talking to my writer friends where it's like, you have to now be a jack of all trades sometimes, which in the past, it wasn't necessarily that because you have a passion for an idea and you can get in the room and you might not be the greatest presenter, but now that's kind of what's expected of you. So it's interesting that people can pre-record the stuff and, you know, find a way to make it more comfortable for them. And then it could just be the post Zoom where you're saying, you know, that's the live Q&A kind of stuff. So you're not going through the whole pitch live. So it's been a cool, interesting year. And I think everyone's kind of just had to figure out new ways and develop new talents and stuff.
I was going to say, like, I think one thing that we've learned from pitching stuff to the studio and buyers on Zoom this past year a bunch is just like visuals are really helpful if you're not going to pre-record something, which I have recommended to some younger or greener meaning less experienced writers that have reached out to me. I've recommended recording their pitches like Mette was saying, because if maybe you can't get a full meeting with a producer you want to submit an idea to, but maybe you can send them a Vimeo link through your manager or something. Or if you know someone personally, send them the video of the pitch and say, like, how do you like this idea? And I think it's worked really well for people, especially if they're trying to get their foot in the door with like an interesting proof of concept idea. And similarly, when we're doing a live pitch, because we've done a few really big, giant, like important pitches via Zoom, and it was very stressful because like everyone's saying, it's really hard to pay attention for a while. Everyone's looking at their email and pretending they're not looking at their email. And like after a certain point, it is just really hard to keep people's attention. So we've done a lot of I built a lot of slides for a lot of pitches that were like visual, distraction, attention grabbing, keeping everyone's eyes on the screen and engaged in the story. And for example, for our Spider-Man television stuff that we are developing, we actually ended up making a few sizzle reels, which was like much easier to get an idea across to someone in some cases than doing a full-on pitch, because we were trying to demonstrate like what the tone and visual style of this crazy idea was. And so working with an editor to do a sizzle reel and sending that around actually like worked really well in getting to the heart of like everyone getting on board with this concept, which was interesting to learn.
Yeah, especially with animation stuff where it's like, if you're wanting to know what it looks like, this is a quick little snippet of this is how it's going to feel because we've already got this. And live action, I feel like, is very different. It's like, well, you don't necessarily have the cast already. Can't really put that kind of stuff. You have ideas of what you're going to do. But obviously the pitching is interesting and different this year for you guys all working on the other side and being remote. Jeanette, what has that been like for you? Just the kind of how has working changed and just being able to be remote?
I mean, I think there are a lot of benefits. I do feel like there's there was, so much sort of difficulty in terms of how long certain meetings would take to come together. I remember one time it was almost a 2-month stretch pre-COVID where we were trying to get a meeting on the books, but people have to be in town. Now that's definitely not the case. It's smoothed a lot of that, as much as you lose something in the sort of, in-person pitching and the dynamic and the energy that's there. It's also opened up a world of, writer meetings that I might not have had. A lot of people don't actually do their LA water bottle tour, which is typically what happens if you have a spec that's sent around and people really like it. Maybe, your manager or agent sends you around to meet all of the producers and development execs who could work with you pretty easily.
Wait, why is it called a water bottle tour? I don't
know. Everyone hands you water, like you show up and like everyone's assisted, or they get you water. You're just constantly being offered water and taking meetings and driving around. I've never done one myself, but it must feel like a really funny, like just Groundhog's Day. Every office that you walk into.
Water bottles. So
it's glasses at Bad Robot, but you will be offered water straight away.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's nice because, some people don't necessarily do that right away. It can be expensive and exhausting. And so definitely getting to know some of those writers earlier in their careers who might not have made their way into the Bad Robot office in another circumstance, another time. So yeah, I don't know. I think it makes us more global. It means we can move more nimbly. And it's a shame it took a pandemic for that to happen, but we're definitely rolling with it. So
yeah.
I have to say too, on a couple of these movies that we're prepping, in addition to Cocaine Bear, we're shooting a R-rated live-action talking dog movie in September called Strays, and it's a big team. We have producing partners, we have the director, we have the writer, we have the studio, we have a dog sourcer and trainer, we have VFX, we have casting, and it would be impossible to try to wrangle all of these people into a room. And this way we can have meetings 5 days a week, and I think things are moving a lot quicker than they would have normally, as those, we're not dealing with the logistics of where are we going? This person can't drive here, commutes, blah, blah, blah. It's actually been a lot easier just to be like, okay, in an hour, we're talking about how many Australian Shepherds we still need to acquire, so it's kind of been, it's beneficial, I hate to say. So
wait, what, Sam?
Can I please come to set one day for that one? For that.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone come to Atlanta and hang out with the dogs. It's gonna be
I have a pretty cute dog, so
put him in the movie.
Does he act
Give
though,
me a
Tiffany?
He does. He does.
Trained him well.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's something too where it's like I'm curious to see if it's easier to get one linear idea of what a project's going to be, because like you said, Nikki, everyone can hop onto a Zoom, where you wouldn't necessarily always have wardrobe, the animal people, whatever, the director, everybody on at once and just have one conversation that's like, hey, this is the overall concept for the film, this is what we're doing, and everyone actually getting to hear it firsthand instead of it being like passed down the line all the time. So I'm curious to see what sticks from this year in that kind of way for pitching, from this last year moving forward, that hopefully, it kind of, for me as an actor, I'm like, self-tapes are great, but I like being in the room, but I understand that it's like, you get to see more actors, and me as an actor, I get to work on it a lot more. And I know I'm a lot happier with what I'm sending in the end. So for pitches for people, where it's like, if they can record it, I think a lot of times they're a lot happier. But then when it gets further along, it's like, there is just something about feeling someone's energy and being in the same space, especially on, these creative projects that we're doing. Because I think for me, so much of why I love doing this is because it is a communal art project. Like, we all get to have our energies coming together and working together in a space and celebrating that together, that when you get to that final step, like, I hope that we still do get to have those in-person moments. Because I'm hearing about projects where it's like, casting directors are never even meeting the talent that they cast on projects. They're like, we did it all over Zoom. I have no idea what they're like in person. And it's a weird kind of, how do we move forward from that, and what parts of it do we keep and stuff? Sam, for you, what has this year been like working remote? And are there things that you're super excited about that you guys did that you're like, I hope we keep this, or you're like, maybe not so much this thing?
I mean, we do like a daily check-in every day, which is great. And like structure, I'm someone that really does need like a structure, and that's why I liked going to the office. So having to be able to like have somewhere to go again, I think will be great. I don't want to go in 5 days a week, and I think that there's some sort of arrangement there. Yeah, it's been, I mean, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I continue on to the next one.
No, Sam, but I think you're totally right. The flexibility in just your schedule, which is what you're talking about. And I totally agree. And we've all talked about like, yeah, I'm not going to miss sitting in traffic for an hour going to the office, or, you know, going to a meeting. And the reverse of that, right, is you don't have to make people come to you and travel across a city like LA, which can take you hours. So I think that's great too. Just and hopefully we can just keep Zoom meetings, like have that be a thing. And maybe if it's just meeting somebody for the first time, that can happen over Zoom. I think I at least would be really happy with that scenario.
Well, and I think it's like, it can, again, like we've said across the board, like it kind of picks up the pace on things where it's like, if you can have 5, and there's a balance for me where I'm like, I feel like I did so much things before the pandemic, and now it's like doing 1 or 2 things feels exhausting. But on the flip side of that, I can actually do 3 auditions on self-tapes that if I were driving all over Los Angeles, there would be so much stress and anxiety, and I might make 2 of them. That I feel like for everybody doing pitches, and for you guys, where it's like, how much more work can you get done because you're not having to drive all over, or schedule a specific time where 5 people can show up because you're like, everyone's at home or remote and they can quickly, easily hop on for 15-20 minutes.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think you have to do a lot more consciously, like to your point, Samantha, about the like daily check-ins. Normally you're in the office and you just have a casual encounter with your colleagues and you check in with them and you sort of see how they're doing. And now we have to kind of schedule that sort of thing in and really make the effort to make the connection. So I know like Zoom can be very cold, but it can also not be, you know, when people actually make an effort to try to make people feel comfortable and seen, and you're not checking your email, you know, or just really being present with the people who you work with. So I think that's something that we kind of learned in the pandemic, is like, we should also have meetings where we just chat, you know, because we would do that in a normal, you know, day-to-day office environment. So anyway, all that to say, there's so many aspects to how work has changed. Some of them we're still perfecting, but
yeah, I do think
there's like a middle. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Like balance out a little bit though, like coming out of this, I think all of us worked so hard last year, because 1, it was something to do because we were stuck inside, but 2, it was so easy to get a hold of everyone, you know, my phone, my email, all that, like we were so connected. And I do think coming out of this, there needs to be a little bit of a rebalance so that it's not, you know, constant when it's in your home, like when it's on your phone carrying around with you. It's like, it definitely were points for me where I was like, it got a lot. So like finding time to also be like, gotta take my lunch break, gotta go for like a walk, like gotta get a little bit of peace, because otherwise, you know, people will just keep working and keep working.
Yeah, the line between work and home definitely got blurred in work from home, so that you could always be working because you were at home. And some companies, I think, really took advantage of that. Something that I really loved, that was part of the first episode of the Rashida Jones, Bill Gates podcast that they were doing in the second half of last year, is they talked about how they think post-pandemic, especially Bill, that there's going to be a finer line, a more well-drawn line between work and home. And also even that he thinks people will move farther away from cities because they will be able to work from home a couple days a week. And also that people will, when they're sick, stay home, which traditionally our culture has not done. So that will be more respected by bosses and those you work for. And And I hope that that's true for our industry as well.
And so much of it is mental health and taking control and accountability for yourself and your employees and stuff. Cause it's, there's, like Sam was saying, it's so much easier to be plugged in all the time. And even for me, it's like, I've tried to kind of set a time at the end of the day where I'm like, I tell everybody, if you email me anything, I'm not going to see it until the morning. Like if it's urgent, call me, because I just need time where it's like a friend of mine, they texted me, it was like, they were all out doing something, text me 3 times in a row. And I was like, is this an emergency? And they're like, no, it's not. We just wanted you to like come hang out with us because we're finally all out together. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm doing a puzzle. This is my like Tiffany disconnect time.
Emergency to me.
But it's like, you have to make those lines for yourself and tell people what your expectations are. Because I think people's expectations of what you're available for have changed a lot this last year.
Yeah, I think it's a hilarious double-edged sword that we're all just going to have to figure out, because some things are good that I think we've become more efficient. Meetings are happening faster. There are new ways to hang out with people who don't live here. And, it's nice to connect with people that way. But like Sam was saying, I totally agree. It's been harder to separate things from work. And it's going to be interesting to see how we play that out, because I do think, and there's been a lot of miscommunication, I think, because like someone else said, it's cold. Like when you're on Zoom or you're just texting or emailing all day, it's really hard to know if someone, like if you're not fully getting across to someone, as it would be easier if you were just in the office, like keeping tabs on the situation or talking in person about it.
Yeah. Well, and
specific and whatever the preferences of the bosses are. I've worked in the last year for bosses both who hated video calls and love video calls, and love calls, hate calls, love texting, hate texting. So it's also just about where you work and how they adjust to the pandemic, continue to and will afterwards.
Yeah. And making your space comfortable for you to do Zooms in. Cause like Sam was saying, it is like having people in your house all the time. Like it's like sometimes it's lunchtime and I'm trying to make lunch and I'm in my kitchen and my dog's running around and I'm like, you're in my house. You never would have been in maybe not never, but like this early in getting to know people, sometimes you're like, they wouldn't see all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But because of how you're set up, it's that way.
Hilarious. I have one of my bosses, which I say this to him, so it's fine for me to say. I'm like, stop eating, stop drinking. I can hear you. I'm in your mouth. Put down the bagel. But it cracks me up. But Zoom etiquette has been one of the fun part coming out of this.
Yeah. Fortunately, no mishaps of people forgetting that their cameras are on.
Yeah.
We all saw those on
wood. Yeah.
Definitely people not knowing their mic is still on is a thing.
Yeah. Yep.
We had one Zoom where they left their mic on and they'd put their phone in their pocket to just be on audio. And for whatever reason, they weren't hearing us. And we were like, please mute, please mute yourself. Did we just get a new Zoom link? Like, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I do when he's eating or chewing. I'm like, sorry, I'm putting you out.
Yeah, you need to be able to control muting the other people on the Zoom.
That's when you're the host of the Zoom. That's how you do it. I'm so happy that we got to have this chat because I think, after the year that we've had, there's definitely a lot of hard times, but still like ending on laughing stuff where it's like, it's fun and silly. And, there have been moments of joy and, wonderful things that have come out. And I'm sad that it had to come out of the hard stuff that we did have to go through. But I'm super hopeful for everything coming forward and moving forward into the next year. And kind of on that note, what's something that for each of you guys, if you want to go through like a project that you're working on or something that's about to come out with your company that you're really excited about? We can start with you, Mette.
Good question. I'm really excited for a lot of the things that we are very close to, a green light, hopefully. I'm hoping that those move forward. But mostly I'm just really excited for our show Just Beyond coming out on Disney Plus this year in October. I just think it's going to be such a fun YA anthology horror series, and I think people are going to love it. So that's one that I'm really excited about.
And what about you, Aubrey?
Well, I'm really excited for people to see the After Party, our murder mystery comedy that we made for Apple Plus, and we're not entirely sure when it'll come out quite yet, but most likely near the end of this year on Apple. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm really excited to start production on our first live action Spider-Man show, hopefully soonish, if we can figure that out.
Nikki?
I'm also excited for the after party for Aubrey's show. I intentionally have not read any scripts for it because I don't want to know who did it, because I just want to go in as a fan and just enjoy the show. So I'm very excited for that.
We like covers ears in our staff meetings. So
I
like
have literally taken my headphones out if I think there are spoilers coming, because I don't want to know. And yeah, excited to go make some animal-centric movies this year about bears and dogs. So, yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
How about for you, Gray?
Right now, I'm excited for my next job, and until then, I'm just grateful to be going back to the movies and seeing great movies like Quiet Place 2, and with my new puppy, who, as my emotional support animal, is allowed in the movie theater, which is awesome. He did not like the aliens. He was not a fan of the aliens.
He's a baby.
He's a baby. And reading great scripts and seeing great movies at the movie theater, and yeah, can't wait for the next job.
Woo! Jeanette?
Really excited that our movie Lou that we're shooting for Netflix that was pushed due to COVID is now in production in Vancouver. It's like so beautiful and lush, and we've Allison Janney and Jurnee Smollett. It's I don't know, I'm really excited to go up there and just see how it comes together. And then in the sort of, you know, big IP of it all, I'm so beyond thrilled that we're doing Superman. Ta-Nehisi Coates is so amazingly talented and insightful, and we're really, really excited for that one. It was a sort of, you know, emotional revelation that you get to, when you get to work on something like that, that's so big. So that's it.
Yeah. And Sam?
We are in pre-production on our Universal monster movie Renfield, which is like a comedy action, a little bit of horror blend, which Chris McKay is directing. We're casting it right now, and I'm pumped. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and doing some of that blending that I talked about earlier. And I think it'll be a good, another project of ours to show that we can do comedy as well.
Awesome. Well,
what about you, Tiff?
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I was gonna just talk about myself, but I'll take the lead in. Thank you. I'm really excited, like personally, just to be around people again and create with other people. That's the biggest thing for me. But I obviously am so pumped for everyone to see Master of the Universe Revelation that's coming out Netflix July 23rd. It's one of those projects where everyone was so passionate about it, and I think it really, really, really comes across on the screen. And then Aloha with Love, I'll keep everybody posted on social media when that one's coming out. I had such a great time doing that one. And I know for usually when we do these panels in person, we get to have an audience and they get to ask us questions and stuff in person. But because this is virtual, you guys were so wonderful and created an email address for people to reach out. So if you guys are watching this and you have questions, obviously not taking any pitches for anything, but just questions about, you know, the industry and how it all works, feel free to reach out. It's entertainmentisfemale@gmail.com, and follow everybody on socials. I'll obviously post about the panel and stuff, so that way you guys can see what everybody's kind of doing on there as well. I'm Tiffany Smith. You can follow me on social at Tiffany_Smith. And thank you guys so much, Sam, Jeanette, Gray, Mette, Aubrey, Nikki. You guys are so wonderful. And I just love so much that you are willing to and want to share your experience and expertise for everybody watching who wants to get into the industry. So big round of applause. Yay! This is our dance break.
Thank you to you.
So much.
Tiffany.
We wouldn't be here without you. We love you, and just so thrilled that you could be here as well. Thank you.
Guys. Love you guys too. And we'll see each other again in person soon. Maybe next year, our panels in person. Our panels in person.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks, you guys, everybody, for watching. And I hope you're having a great time at San Diego Comic-Con at home.